Welcome to Two Crazy Scoops podcast with your hosts Ao and Antino. This week we have our special guest Tyson Torres with us. He's going to talk about Star Wars and some other really cool things. He's got some funny, good experiences, and so we hope you enjoy this week's podcast. Enjoy. Hey, this is Antonio Cervantes with Ao. We're here on our podcast, Two Crazy Scoops. I'm not even sure if I said that in the intro, did I?
You said it, but it's okay. Repetition.
Scoops of what is the question?
Exactly. That's what we're all here to discuss.
Exactly.
So how are you doing today, Tyson?
I'm doing good, doing good. Yeah, es geht gut, mein Freunde.
Well, we're really happy that you're able to come on this week.
Thank you.
You're probably the most, I don't want to offend anybody else, but you're probably the most professional guest that we have here.
Oh, so. I don't know about that. You know, everyone's professions are a little different. I'm sure there's a professional unicycle rider out there somewhere.
Oh, he actually got hit by a car and died.
I'm so sorry. 10 points?
Yeah.
Oh.
He actually did. Anyways, we talk about death a lot on this podcast. I'm sorry. Aaron, what would you like to add?
I'm speechless.
Okay.
So, like we do, we started this thing with our guests recently where we start asking a couple of icebreaker questions first, and just to kind of get you started, so people can, kind of understand who you are, where you're from, and your personality type before we dig into the deeper.
I'm like an ENFP.
An ENFP.
Oh, that's not what you were asking. Okay, I'm
So,
sorry.
these first actually a couple of questions are Antino's questions that he had for you. So
yes. So, knowing I did look up your LinkedIn profile.
Oh, thank you for doing your homework.
Yeah, I was trying to do
we
some
stalk
research.
all of our guests.
Somebody who cares.
Yeah. But the real fun comes after the podcast. No, so it does say you speak German.
I am conversant in German. In fact, I was just telling Aaron before we started that, I watch German Bundesliga. My family is from there.
Oh, okay.
And so, but, it's hard to remember all the vocabulary words.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll be watching the broadcast and be like, wait a minute, is that what he said? I'm not sure. So I have to think about it. But yeah. German's fun. German's fun.
Cool. Do you ever use that ability to confuse people or, kind of just as a prank, just pretend you don't speak English?
I did have a good time using that at Oktoberfest.
Oh.
Maybe not quite to that degree, but I did kind of let, some of the vendors there, it's Oktoberfest. I have my whole costume and everything. I go with my Trachtenhut, right? That's the special hat with a little elk, fur on it and stuff. And,
wow.
So I walk up and so, yeah, it was kind of fun to talk to the vendors in German, kind of to let them know, no, really, there's a person from the old country here. And they're like, oh, well, our beer better be really good then. I'm like, yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun to do it.
Where did you get the hat from?
Actually, that one I bought in the Austrian Alps.
Oh, okay.
That one I happened to, I got the rest of the costume, online, but the hat is legit.
Wow.
I actually got it from an Alpen, a store, Kaufen up there in Austria when I was out there. This is a long time ago, man.
Oh, wow.
It's probably been 20 plus years. So yeah, it's fun though. It's fun.
You remember 20 years ago, right, Aaron?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I was 3.
Yesterday.
I was, yeah. Another thing that I found very interesting is board gaming. What draws you to that, would you say?
I've always been a little more of a board gamer than a video gamer. And not that I have anything, against video gaming. I do it, but board gaming, there's something special about sitting or standing across the table and being able to see the whites of their eyes before you destroy them. No, I'm just kidding.
No, I agree completely.
No, because the table, the table talk, the conversation, it'll get into not just the game, it'll get into philosophy and, history and, experiences, and you get a more personal feel than just having a headset when you're getting ready to attack the castle or whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
So, and it depends on the board game too. Some board games, are, forgive me for all you Monopoly and Risk fans, but they're, little elementary. Whereas, sorry.
Monopoly.
Monopoly.
That's my game.
No.
Hey man, we can always do reverse amortization and do some special interest rate deals and stuff if we get to that point. But yeah, there are games that I've enjoyed. Imperial 2030 comes to mind. That one is one that doesn't use dice. And the random element is only what the guy next to you is thinking. Stuff like that, where you start, you reduce the amount of just stupid stuff that can happen. And then, as the game goes on, man, you better be paying attention, because it's all about, it's not just what you're planning, but how much you know or you think you know about what your fellow man is planning next to you. So, yeah, the games like that, that one has a roundel as opposed to dice. That one's really, really good.
So how do you think, what do you think you can learn about a person from playing a board game with them?
Oh, you can learn a lot. You can learn a lot. There are games that I will play if requested, but they're not my favorite. Like Diplomacy is one like that, because you basically have to be a professional liar.
Oh.
And, it's fun, but at the same time, you are practicing a skill that I'm not sure that if, a good person would find all that valuable, right? So... But yeah. I mean, some people are ultra competitive, Other people intentionally hold back to keep the peace because they perceive that there might be some, off-game, ramifications to the decisions they're making, right? Especially if their spouse is also playing the game. No, you're schmoopy. No, you're schmoopy. So you end up playing a team game, and you thought you were every man for himself, right?
Nope.
Yeah. So,
There's
anyways,
family bonds there. That's funny. Yeah. I'm the kind of person where I don't really remember rules too well. So when I'm playing with people, I'm more. Actually, people don't like playing board games with me because I have like crash and burn mentality. If I can't figure out a game, I'll just figure out a way to make you lose.
Yep. The king maker, king breaker.
Yeah, so
that explains
I'm not a good board game person. That's why I just stick to chess and also lose.
That's the game of kings.
And we have one more icebreaker question before we move on.
Shoot 'em.
So if you had your own late night talk show, who would you invite as your first guest?
You know what? When that day comes, and I'm sure it will,
We think so
I'm
too.
going to remember the little people.
The little people.
And I'm going to invite the guys who started the whole thing going. Ao and Antonio. That's who I'm going to come.
Yes.
And that's going to be on my time. I'm going to be like, you know what?
Thank you.
You guys got me started in this whole thing, so I'm going to invite you back and tell me, what are you doing now?
Can we get a cash advance on that?
Well, who says you're getting paid? I'm helping you out on my talk show. It's like a free plug, right?
I know, right?
It's like, hey, so
We will plug the podcast.
me and Aaron are still in our basement recording the podcast. Yeah, so we've moved cassette tapes to make it a little more indie. That's been one of our upgrades.
You saw the 8-track in your car too, right? Yeah. Balling out now.
Oh man! So now the real reason we brought you here.
Okay.
So me and Aaron, we took our hand at doing a little bit of commentary, I guess, on the new Star Wars film. But Aaron and myself, we both know that you are not just a common bystander like ourselves, but are actually invested in the story somewhat. So how do you feel about this last film?
So, I think asking about the rise of Skywalker, and I'm not even sure if we can do spoilers on this.
Yes,
on this
we
podcast.
totally just tore it apart last time.
Okay, all right. So, spoilers ahead, but
Spoiler alert.
to me, the question really derives from how I felt about Episode 8, The Last Jedi, more than how I felt about Episode 9.
Mm-hmm.
Because Episode 8 represents a massive, shall we say, departure from the Star Wars that we all knew and loved. Lucas had his wife Marcia kind of helping him in the original trilogy. That's why the dialogue was so great. A lot of the good, there was people there to tell him no. Mm-hmm. And then we got to prequels, and Lucas wrote all those by himself. And the story was still there, but there's a lot of crazy dialogue and some, there was a lot of concentration on the special effects and the aliens and all that, right? CGI. And then you get to the sequel trilogy, which I admit I was very excited for. Mm-hmm. I mean, how long have fans been waiting for that, right? Yeah. Almost 40 years. And, JJ had a very good track record. And so I was actually very hyped for The Force Awakens. But I'll tell you, from the way that movie ended and then, with the big sweeping emotional theme that John Williams spent how much time, no one had ever heard this before, the Jedi steps, and Rey is climbing up these steps in this incredible, location, and music is sweeping, and then her facial expression, and Luke with his cloak, and he turns his back, and then it's this whole moment.
Yeah.
To me, one of my fondest memories, even of all Star Wars, was being in the theater the first time watching that all unfold. I'm like, whoa, she is going to see Luke Skywalker. I mean, it was unbelievable. So that moment was all set up. Forget about the rest of the plot, because we'll talk about that in a minute too. But to have Luke in the next movie throw the lightsaber over his shoulder like it was a salt shaker. Like, thank you, Rian Johnson. I know people, his name is Rian. I don't dignify him with Rian. I call him Ryan.
Or some people say ruin.
Anyways, but I think going back to your original question, Antonio, I mean, Rise of Skywalker is the attempted retconning of the sewage dump that was episode 8. And I'll tell you, episode 8, actually, for me, there are redeeming qualities to it. It is a visually gorgeous movie.
Yeah.
I mean, the men and women who worked on that thing, I mean, they put their hearts and souls into that. It's clearly obvious. I mean, it looks amazing. But there was so much shoehorning of, different sort of modern and postmodern, like, philosophies.
Yeah.
And, people talk about social justice and, all this stuff that, the Canto Bite scene with the little llama-looking, rabbit horses that, you need to rescue them. And, like, they can't be rounded up in 5 more minutes by those guys in the ships, right? Anyways, so... But I think Rise of Skywalker does a good job letting the fans know that JJ is aware
that something went wrong
that
here.
Perhaps, the train is just not quite on the tracks anymore. There might be a little bit of heat, as the flames rise higher and higher. But he had to do so much to retcon what Johnson did in 8 that I think the larger story gets lost. And frankly, I mean, if you're like, okay, I'm a chef, I'm a baker, right? And I'm going to make this incredible loaf of bread that's going to serve as the bun for the best burger in the world, right? So I have put and slaved and put all this effort to making the finest bread to be the bun for this burger. And then the guy who makes the actual, the middle part of the burger, it's like sawdust and rancid butter. So all my bread doesn't matter anymore. So that's kind of where I'm at. I mean, the pace of Rise of Skywalker was a little too fast. It was kind of like, forgive me, but it was like being in the swirling vortex, like a Star Wars, like LSD drug trip, like a kaleidoscope of like lights and colors were like before my eyes, and it was like,
It should have been 2 movies.
I mean, yeah, that's one solution. Kathleen Kennedy, next time don't invite the Joker when talking about Rian Johnson. I mean, let's get the same guy to do all 3 movies. I mean, I will tell you, Disney is one of the very few large companies that bothers to have a story group. These are people whose sole job it is to kind of preserve canon and to have everything make sense. I would imagine there were some interesting conversations that happened in that little room there, right? Yeah. But were they shouted down? Were they ignored? Did they not even convene the story group for a couple years? I don't know. I did see Colin Trevorrow released a script here very recently that was very, very different from what we saw in episode 9, as we saw it on screen. So I can't wrap my head around which one would have been better. I think, in some ways, JJ did what he had to do to sort of attempt to repair the damage. But I will say, I mean, I'm a lifelong Star Wars fan. I got to tell you, man, I think the sequel trilogy will forever be known as a train wreck.
Yeah.
And there's very little that JJ or anybody could have done to fix that once it got made.
Yeah, and that's what I thought was interesting about the movies, too. What you're saying was mostly Star Wars was made for you to get lost in the world, and the new ones were more a commentary on society as a whole today, and it was kind of, it just lost the story aspect for me. So,
right.
But how would you balance that against, you mentioned the prequels, how did you feel when those came out?
I think the problem is that people have this idea that the original trilogy is like the greatest thing ever. And it's really close, okay? The original trilogy had sort of a magical character development. The dialogue was more realistic. So now, instead of just being this crazy space opera where you couldn't identify, audiences actually felt like, they could identify with the characters because of the interactions and what was going on. And the prequels just had a lot of difficulty matching that dynamic because it was less about story and less about script and more about the special effects and the locations and the visual grandeur of the spectacle. And, I have to tell you, Revenge of the Sith for me is actually a good movie because there's not a moment where it's like, oh, this is fluffy, huffy, fluffy, puffy filler. Thank you. Frankly, like the whole, Jabba's palace scene in Return of the Jedi. I'm sure that's sacrilege to some people, but that really wasn't supposed to be in Return of the Jedi. The story was going to move directly from Empire to the Emperor and Endor and the Death Star 2 and all of that. But they needed to make a whole movie, so they had this whole subplot over here where they're going to go rescue, Han from Jabba and blah, blah, blah and all that. I mean, and what would life be like without Cy Snoodles and the Max Rebo band, Especially in the special editions, I might add.
Yeah, the CGI. I don't even know what it is. What would you compare it to, Aaron? Do you know what we're talking about?
The band that was
there's that singer, and it's like this froggish.
They CGI'd in.
I mean,
there's no words.
Aaron's gonna sing the song right now. Yes.
Yeah, there you go.
We're a musical podcast now.
No, I know that you're a musician. I'm sure you can appreciate, the difficulty of Max Rebo, the blue dude, being able to play the piano looking keyboard thing with mittens on instead of having fingers. But anyways.
Exactly.
Mittens. I'm gonna try that. Actually, that may be what's holding me up from.
That's it. Once you can do that, you're there, man. That's the next level.
That's what you want to see. Come out, mittens, and just start hammering around on it.
Send him to a higher league.
Yep. Yeah. Thanks for sharing. What would you rate the film then, The Rise of Skywalker?
Oh man, this is a tough one because if you are a casual film goer that pays attention to the Academy Awards and all that, it is not going to be a highly rated film. There are a lot of problems, there are a lot of holes, right? Those people are going to rate this thing 4 or 5, to be honest, right? The people who were hit over the head with episode 8, right? Who, basically told each other, bring me here upon a platter the head of Rian Johnson, they have a much higher estimation of The Rise of Skywalker simply because it wasn't Last Jedi level. I mean, not to get political, but I know that there was a moment when Barack Obama won the Nobel Peace Prize. They're like, well, why? He just brand new in office. How come he won that? He's like, oh, because his name is not George Bush. So anyway, I do have mixed feelings about it, but I thought that JJ did what he could to bring it back around and at least, and even the hard slaps. Like there was a moment where JJ has Luke say, he's handing the lightsaber back and he goes, a Jedi's weapon deserves more respect.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yes. Yeah. I'm like pumping my fist in the dark of the theater because I knew what Rian Johnson was saying to himself as he watched that moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, man. And I was going to get your thoughts on, what do you think of force healing then?
It looked like that was contrived to kind of match up what they were doing with Mandalorian. Okay. And I understand because in addition to just being a cool new Jedi power, they were trying to make it actually part of the story of the redemption of Ben Solo. It seems rather inconvenient to introduce something so powerful so late amongst a 9-movie arc, because then you start thinking about, well, how come they couldn't have done that during this circumstance or that circumstance or what's going on, right? But maybe it's something that they read only in the Jedi text, except Baby Yoda, who just kind of knows it intrinsically. Right?
Yeah.
but
he's got a lot of midichlorians. That's why.
I mean, it's interesting, and it would be obviously it's never shown, but the implication is that only light side users can do that, right? Which makes sense. Just like light side can't shoot lightning, typically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, unless. Yeah.
But,
Another thing is if you're evil, you'll just survive anything at this point. So you don't really need force healing. I think that's
or your name is Rey, when you have to pay nothing and do nothing to become the greatest force user in the universe.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Chosen one, I'm Rey.
I'm Rey.
I thought you knew.
Get out of the way.
By the way, one more little side point because you mentioned force lightning. I thought it was kind of funny in all the movies that Palpatine was defeated by force lightning 3 times.
Yes.
The first 2, he didn't learn his lesson. The first time, he tried to use it. Mace Windu, reflected it back on him in Revenge of the Sith. Then it didn't work against Luke because, Vader grabbed him. And he actually got shocked by some of his own lightning. And what was that? Return of the Jedi. And now here we are, Rise of Skywalker. And this fool, what's the first thing he does when he gets power back? Force lightning.
Hey, but I've heard this and I agree with you. But in universe, I saw a fan write this little treatise about why that happens, and it's because supposedly when a Sith Lord of sufficient gravity invokes force lightning of that magnitude, he can't just turn it off. Because the dark side is flowing through him, and it's like having to screw back like a fire hydrant. He can't just turn it off. He has to let it flow through him, right?
Okay.
So yeah, I don't know if I buy that. I'm just letting you.
Well, but even if that's the case, he had 2 chances to realize that ahead of time and be like, you know what? If I use out of all the power that he could have shown, because remember he just picked them up in the air and flung them around a second ago,
right?
I would resort to that because that looks like it's more effective.
So
than
on this
lightning.
podcast, we're gonna talk about how Aaron's a Sith Lord or wants to be a Sith Lord, and how do you go about killing people?
No, I'm just saying, they come up with something different, new.
No, okay. So now we're going way off the beaten path.
We have a meme about that.
Oh yeah, I like this meme. This is good. I hate it when that happens. No. There's a book called Darth Plagueis, which I've read. Okay. I forget the author's name now, but in it talks about a moment when Sidious Master Plagueis is about to be assassinated because he's miscalculated. He's very wise and he's very good, but he miscalculated this one political rival of his that wanted him dead. And, of course, that person did not realize that Plagueis was a Sith Lord. He's, just a Mun, banking clan member who's got all this, financial and political clout. So these guys show up, and the description that book has when Plagueis is actually hard put to it, because there's 70 trained assassins that show up, blow through the windows, and try to take him down. The stuff that he has to do with the Force is so much more imaginative and interesting. Then force lightning. Yep, just plug yourself in the wall outlet there. Yep, just let it go. I mean, that was kind of a cool novel thing back in 1983, but now it's man, it's passé. Let's show me something else. You know.
Yeah. And also, a point I had brought out in the previous podcast is how hard it is to find a good employee, and yet he found 1 million people to not just be in the ship, but command a ship.
I know, right?
Yeah.
He offered great benefits, I'm sure.
Yeah. They're like, I have no idea why we're here, but heck, let's blow them up.
Oh boy, yeah. Like I said, there are some holes in the plot.
Yeah. So, well, thanks for sharing us your views, because like I said, me and Aaron, we're not really as in depth with the storyline with all that stuff.
So
tell us real quickly, what do you do for work?
So I'm director of business development at CS Design Studios. And what's funny is there is a little connection there because our office is decked to be kind of like a little mini Star Wars museum. Our office is designed with it's got, a 4-foot Vader doll. It's got a full-size R2-D2 and a full-size, Stormtrooper. We got all the walls decked out with murals and stuff and, some props and things from the movies. And Ironically, we're located inside of Trail Dust Town, which is an Old West theme park. So maybe it's kind of like visiting Westworld. You go from like Old West to sci-fi. But no, our clients and guests love coming because it is meant to be a transportive experience. And so, we've got some other, kind of themes in there too. We got a little bit of Tron, trying to get some more Star Trek in there. It's a little bit of, video game, Mario World kind of stuff going. But yeah, Star Wars is clearly the owner's first love. So, but yeah, we do web design and we do some digital marketing and just kind of, let Google know that you're legit. And once Google knows that, you don't need us anymore. You can just rank, right? And we just maintain it. So, the guys that need web help or, marketing help, that's what we do.
Okay.
You get a Star Wars flavor to boot.
Yeah.
Awesome. What's the website?
It's csdesignstudios.com. So that's, what is that? Cat Sam Design Singular Studios, plural, all one word. .com, yeah.
What does the CS stand for?
What's interesting is that I thought it was like initials or something, but the truth is it stands for Copper State.
Oh, well.
Copper State. It's an old acronym from way back, and they just kept it and they haven't changed it. So that's what it is. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Mm-hmm. Well, I guess we know that little bit of history now.
Yeah, a little bit of trivia there. You can
plug away,
stump people.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. At my next coffee shop trivia night. So you guys know what scene? Like, what?
Who?
Yeah. Tucson, the place.
Right. That place. So really quickly, Tyson, I heard something earlier. It was a commercial, and
yeah, okay.
I didn't realize I had to hear it twice before I recognized the voice. So could you know what I'm talking about? Can you kind of explain what I'm referring to?
So locally, there is a commercial that has kind of become infamous that I was involved with. Remember that scene in SNL where they keep saying more cowbell?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It was kind of like that. Just, getting to the point where it was jump the shark, over the top, ridiculous. And the voice that we're talking about, right? This is like the monster truck rally, super ridiculous, Sunday, we'll sail the whole seat. You only need the edge, right? So, but it was a commercial for a car dealer. And it was one of those super bargain basement, buy here, pay here kind of dealers too. And no offense to those guys. I mean, they were kind to me, but
that's where I got my first car, Tyson.
Hey, see, right? Buy a pack of smokes and actually buy a car at the same time, right? Camel Motors.
Exactly. Well, this was Detroit, so.
Yeah, okay. I'm sure they have a Camel Motors there too, right? There's an outlet everywhere.
There's lots of them.
So you do a lot of voiceover work then?
I used to do more before I took a, kind of like a something of a break from that just because of working with CS full time and a lot of my efforts went there. But I do try to stay sharp, and it's a fun gig. Mm-hmm. You need to kind of become different characters and kind of, have a certain way of doing it. But, I only get to practice once in a while now. So it's fun when I get the opportunity like this.
Yes. Well, you have the opportunity now. What voice do you like to do personally?
I'll give you a little piece of my demo just because you guys are asking for it.
Yes,
okay?
we are.
So, yes.
There is a scene at the opening of Return of the Jedi, actually.
Okay.
Right? So the characters are Moff Jerjerrod, who is like the Moff that's in charge of building the Death Star 2. And then, Darth Vader shows up and tries to tell him what's what. So Moff Jerjerrod says something like, "Lord Vader, we are honored by your presence." And then Vader says, "You may dispense with the pleasantries, Commander. I'm here to put you back on schedule." And then he says something like, "But the Emperor asked the impossible. I need more men." And then Vader says, "Then perhaps you can tell him when he arrives." And something like, "The Emperor does not share your optimistic appraisal of the situation." And then, Moff Jerjerrod says something like, "We shall double our efforts." And Vader says, "I hope so, Commander, for your sake. The Emperor is not as forgiving as I am."
Oh, cool.
Right?
That is really good.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks for sharing that with us.
Yeah, that's a fun one. I like doing that one.
Yeah, everyone that comes on the show, we like to have them share a little bit of what something that entertains them, the skill that they have. And
Sure.
I think your voice is very
It's perfect.
yeah, it's captivating.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, it's fun. I do some stuff from Roger Rabbit. I auditioned to do Tony Stark and Thor, not in the movies. Sorry to disappoint you, but in a cartoon about that wasn't 15. It was probably more like 10 years ago, but I didn't get the part.
Oh, what do you have to like? Do you have to kind of read a script that they give you, or do you create a scenario?
Well, they listen to your demo first, and they decide whether they're gonna bother with you, right? But I sent a couple samples in, just in character, and my Stark was a little bit too sort of snarky, I think.
Oh.
I mean, because Tony is a pretty sarcastic guy. Tony Stark is, so I kind of put that little edge on his voice.
Okay, so how would Tony Stark order a pizza then? Ring, ring, ring. Hi, thank you for calling Antonio's Pizza Shop. What would you like to order tonight?
My sensors tell me that you might have the perfect pizza for me.
Yeah, you'd be right. If you're looking online, we have a lot of coupons.
I don't need coupons. I'm a billionaire playboy philanthropist.
Oh, cool. What would you like?
Right, but it's got that kind of, not mean-spirited, but this kind of, smarmy, snarky edge, like, don't you wish you were me?
Yeah.
It's funny because I kind of pulled that a little bit. This is going to sound funny. I listened. There was a guy who was an announcer for ESPN a long time ago, right? And his little, he had this little hook at the beginning and end of shows. And he'd be like, this has been a presentation of ESPN, the worldwide leader in sports.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, wow, So I kind of put a little bit too much of him in my Iron Man, and they were like, "Oh, this guy's a jerk. I'm not gonna hire him."
Yeah.
Part of the Go Network, Go.com. Stop.
Well, that's cool. So what do you do to warm up then?
There are exercises that you can do, and you don't want to go in straight up cold, especially if it's a script that is demanding for some reason. I've done tutorials where there's some pretty technical words, and I still volunteer for Arizona Sun Sounds, reading the newspaper, usually the USA Today. And man, if you're going to be talking about some foreign leader, you better get his name right.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So there are some things you have to do in advance to make sure you don't look like an idiot once you're reading, because if you mispronounce something, people are like, "Oh, I thought he was a professional." You got to get it right. And so I'll sometimes actually invade YouTube or some other news outlet to hear how their scouts have wanted the name pronounced, because those are notes and stuff that the State Department will get sometimes when they're talking about stuff, and so the press secretary gets it right, and then it just kind of filters out from there to all the news outlets, and then to people like me at the outer fringes of meaningfulness, right? When I'm reading USA Today for the visually impaired. But yeah, as far as vocally, I mean, there are some range exercises you can sort of widen your lips a little bit, and kind of get that going, and kind of do scales up and down. But it's you can sort of get a feel for where you need to be. And if you're just doing a simple reading, mostly narrator voice. Even when I'm doing dialogue for USA Today, I don't change the voice like this. Yeah, Jimmy Stewart. How bad at Jimmy Stewart, I might add.
Yeah, you got to ask them if they want a character to read this. Who would you like to read your paper today?
Right, exactly. A name like Smuckers, it has to be good.
Oh man.
I think one of my favorite characters is one of the weasels from Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Remember that movie?
I haven't watched the whole thing all the way through.
Oh man, it's so ridiculous. It's fun, but one of the weasels is like, he talks like this. "Come on, boss, you want that I should grab him? Don't worry about it, boss. We got the whole town covered. Hey, Valiant, step out of line and we'll hang you and your laundry out to dry."
Perfect.
Now I have to watch Who Framed Roger
Oh
Rabbit.
man, dude, it's old reference,
It's a
but
classic,
it's fun.
yeah.
Yeah, it's like Space Jam, right? They mixed the cartoon with
They
the real.
did.
Yeah.
I think Who Framed Roger Rabbit, was like 80 something, so it might have been even a pioneer before Space Jam.
It was definitely before Space Jam.
I know, just like amazing.
I'm guessing like 88, 89.
No, and Christopher Lloyd is in that movie too, and he does something cool where he walks into this place and like they're playing this loony cartoon music, and he hates cartoons, right? So he walks up to the record player and he looks at the record. He's like, "Merry-go-round broke down. What a loony selection for a group of drunken reprobates."
Oh man, you got a lot of voices.
Oh no, man! I'm not gonna bring them all out. But
how many would you say you have?
I mean, I don't know, a couple dozen maybe. You know, some people recognize this one. Boshuda, Duda, Cheetah, Kamawipa.
I'm sorry, I had to throw that in there.
That was good. That was an excellent salacious crumb, Antonio.
Well, I have been called salacious.
And you have some crumbs in your shirt right now.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Oh,
Jeez.
man.
Well, yeah, thanks for sharing that with us, Joe.
Happy to oblige.
We're trying to
gentlemen.
get Aaron to be a voice actor.
No, I don't have a voice for it.
Come on, man. You can do it.
No.
You could do it if you want to do it.
Yeah.
Right.
If you get the practice in, you realize, okay, this is what, you gotta get and stay in character, That's the tricky part. I've done some audiobooks, and I'll tell you, if there's a bunch of different characters, remembering the name that matches the character, you kind of are acting all the different parts.
Oh.
So it gets hard after a while. You're like, okay, then you got to go back because you made a mistake. Like, I forgot what that dude's name is, but there was a guy on like America's Got Talent that has those little puppets or whatever.
Yeah, Jeff. No.
Yeah. I can't remember, but he has a Vegas show now.
Yeah.
And sometimes he'll forget which voice he's supposed to use, and he'll reverse it. The whole audience will just blow up because they're with him. They're rooting for him, but it's just funny,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fun.
Speaking of funny things, your guy's been around a couple places.
That is true.
Seen a couple things.
Oh man.
So we wanted to talk to you about a funny story maybe you got to have that you'd like to share with us.
Yeah. So I had the opportunity to visit Brooklyn some years ago, right? And I kind of stayed at a very nice place, and then I wasn't able to stay there anymore, so I had to find a new place. And I had friends out there that were like, okay, so we found some place for you to stay. And they didn't really know the person, truly, madly, deeply. They didn't really know him, but they knew of him, and he was, he was single, looking to have a little roommate to come through, no problem. I was like, okay, no problem, I'll go. So just driving around, Brooklyn, looking for the place. Nobody knew where it was, but now it's dark. It's probably like an hour into this drive. I'm like, man, nobody knows what this place is, and so we finally stop at this ancient structure that is kind of positioned underneath the Manhattan Bridge, right? I don't know how many stories this building was. It must have been somewhere in the vicinity of 3 or 4. It felt like 6 or 8, but that couldn't have fit underneath the bridge, right? So, but the bridge, I can, down to this day, I have to go back there and kind of think about this. So the guy comes out, and he's got this really badly sort of stained wife beater on, right? And he doesn't really speak a ton of English. He's got this super heavy French accent, and his name, as you might have guessed, is Jean-Louis. Jean-Louis is gonna, I'm gonna stay with Jean-Louis tonight. I'm like, cool, man. This is gonna be a cultural experience. It's gonna be great. So he's like, well, come on up, but not your friends. So I had to say goodbye to my friends right there on the street. He does an about face, and he goes up the stairs, and I'm left. I have some luggage, because I'm young and stupid, don't realize you need to travel light, right? So I've got my little garment bag for my suits, and I've got my bigger suitcase. And now, because the stairwell is so narrow, I put those things up, and I pick them up. Now I'm holding them in front of my hands. I know you can't see me right now, but it's kind of like a squirrel holding a nut, except I got a suitcase handle in each hand, and I'm holding it close to my body, and I'm kind of shuffling up the stairs, right? And I'm, eventually I get up to the top, and you have to understand, at the top of the stairs was this large warehouse-looking room with pillars, but there's these again, warehouse-looking windows everywhere. This floor was like something out of Escape from New York, okay? There's graffiti scrawled everywhere. There's wow. Piles and hordes of trash just strewn throughout the floor, except where there was this massive metal sliding door that led to Jean-Louis' loft, okay? And so I was like, well, that's where I'm going to go. I don't know what the rest of this building used to be, but it's not a residence anymore, right? Mm-hmm. At least not for, humans. So the doors open, and I hear the TV on, and I'm like, okay, it's a real residential dwelling. I feel a little better. So I'm able to get in there, and Jean-Louis is very welcome. He offers me, refreshments, but you know what? I just need to put my luggage down, and I got to go to the bathroom. So I'm like, oh, where's your bathroom? He's like, oh, it's over there. And he points sort of vaguely over the other direction behind the kitchen. And I realize this is a loft, bro. There's no rooms. Mm-hmm. There's not a room in this room. There's just little like sub rooms. And the bathroom was on this kind of foot tall stage. Okay. It was literally raised up about a foot from the floor, right? It's not in a room. It's just a stage with like what appeared to be like a larger than normal shower curtain that sort of hung in this like ring around the stage, right? And inside the ring was a toilet and a sink.
Wow.
And so, but there's a gap, between the bottom of the curtain and the stage itself. So, everyone who's running around there can see whether you're standing or sitting. Oh, I'll talk about noise, okay? So anyways, thank God I took care of my number one business. And, but I'm like a clean person. I care about hygiene, so I want to wash my hands, right? And I go to the sink. The sink is not looking all that great. I need to add that there is a bathtub and a shower, right? The bathtub has feet. No. It has one of those like freestanding tubs. Mm-hmm. It's not like a joined to a wall or something. It's got feet. And the spigot is what appears to be a lead pipe that is unsealed and sticking out of the brick wall. Mm-hmm. Okay? And the spigot is actually got threads as if there's supposed to be some kind of like a fixture there, but there's nothing. Yeah. There's a lead pipe sticking out of a crack in the brick wall, like someone thrust it through, So I'm like, well, as soon as I realize I can't shower here, that means I can't stay here. So I'm already starting to make some contingency plans in my head. But meanwhile, I just went to the bathroom and I got to clean my hands, right? So I go to the sink. There's no soap. So unfortunately, this time, sorry, Mom, I had to just use friction and water, But now I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to find out, what's going on. So I was like, hey, Jean-Louis, I don't have a place to dry my hands. He goes, oh, okay. So, and then I said, oh, I don't know how to, there's no toilet flush. So I'm like, oh, now I'm going to find out where it is, Mm-hmm. He just thrusts his hand into the tank and lifts the flapper manually. Mm-hmm. And that's the toilet flush. I'm like, okay. But I'm like, okay, well, now he's going to wash his hands. I'm going to see where the soap is and I'm going to see where the towels are, right? So then he just kind of like shakes his hands off and walks away. Bam, steps down from the stage. And I'm like, alrighty then. So no towels and no soap, no problem. Just when in Rome, right? So now I need to help you to understand that stage is on the right side of this loft, and there's like a kitchen that's closer to the door. But right in front of the door, there is presumably a little living room area where there are milk crates for chairs, and there's like a sleeping bag, right? And then there's like a room divider off to the left. And what's weird about this loft too is that as the ceiling kind of like doesn't have more lights, and as your gaze kind of casts to the left, your eyes eventually meet this room divider, and then it goes into utter and pitch blackness as the room just continues to like extend beyond your visual acuity. And where you can see, what's really interesting about this, there are murals on the upper walls above the kitchen and the living area. And shall we say they are very European in nature, showing people in various states of undress doing interesting things. But they're paintings, not like photographs or something crazy, right? Yeah. But I'm still like, whoa, what is happening here? These guys are into some serious stuff. So Jean-Louis, he's like, oh, I want you to sleep in my bed. I'm like, oh, you're so generous. Thank you so much. So he showed me his little sleeping bag in the living area between the two milk crates. He had a little a third milk crate with a little black and white TV, which was on the French channel, by the way. So everything was in French. It was great. So he takes me around the room divider to where I'll be sleeping, right? And I have my luggage back with me, and I put it down. And then I see not a bed so much as like this kind of foam wedge, Okay, it looks like a wedge of cheese, but it's made out of foam, right? And there's a blanket on it that is trying to be pink, but it's kind of gray now, right? And there's no pillow. Okay. And by the way, it's already cold in this place, but it's not like freezing cold. It's only like uncomfortably cold, like maybe lower 50s at this point, right? So I'm like, in my mind now, it's solidified. Like, you know what? I'm not going to stay here but one night, but I got to stay here tonight, and there's no way out of it. So just make the best of it, right? And so, and so this was crazy. There's a cat kind of pussyfooting around, if you pardon the pun. And so he's like, oh, that's my cat. And, he likes to jump in my face at night. So if he does that, just kind of, swish him away. Oh. And I was like, okay, So I got that in my mind, and I carefully, because I don't know what the cat's doing. I don't know what's going on. I put all my stuff like up above, like on top of my luggage, on top of the little dresser that was there. And I settled into the cheese wedge, to go to sleep, right? And then I'm trying to sleep, and I kept being woken up by the sound of the train, because there are trains going up over the Manhattan Bridge just over and over and over again. It's super loud because we're so close. And then when there's no train, my teeth are chattering, and I'm waking up to the sound of my own teeth chattering because it's now like in the high 30s, early 40s, and there's this pink blanket looking thing that's trying to keep me warm. And there's no pillow, so I just kind of wadded up some clothes to put underneath my head. And you have to understand the cheese wedge is made in such a way that your head is on the lower part and your feet are in the upper part, like sticking up in the air, So one of the times, I don't even know what time of the morning, it was very dark though, like early morning, past midnight, I'm sure. And I start hearing this little skittering of feet, and I'm like, okay, here comes the cat. So I'm like cocking my hand. I'm like, I'm gonna backhand this cat off my face. He come run for me. You don't even know. So and then way off in the far distance of this loft, I hear a meow. And I'm like, he don't got two cats. And I realized that's why he has that cat. Because there's rats.
Oh no.
So with the cat and the rat, I'm like, is there a bat? Can I get a bat? Do I hear bat? So at this point, like I'm not able to sleep anymore, right? And now I'm just kind of waiting for a little bit more light. So when I start to feel the dawn creeping through the windows, I very, stealthily kind of like get up and I get dressed, and I wrote a nice little note to him, a little bit of money with his key that he gave me, because I was supposed to stay there for several days, and I'm like, brother, sorry. So I pack up my stuff, I get my shoes and my, my shirt and tie back on, and I'm getting ready to jet. Okay, and then, so I come out, and I'm trying to be super quiet, because Jean-Louis, he's sleeping, it's basically the same room, all there is that room divider, right? Yeah. So then I realized what I didn't know the night before because I wasn't paying attention. Now when I'm trying to be quiet, the room has a floor that is made out of welded metal squares, right? So when you step on them, they go boom, 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 right? So I'm like, okay, I am going to have to walk super slowly to get out of here without having this whole scene of why you're leaving and blah, blah, blah. So, but you know what? I made it.
Oh, really?
I got to the door, right? And I'm happy, I have my luggage in my hand. And you have to understand how much like planning was going into my head. There's a pillar out there beyond the sliding door of doom, And like I go and hide my luggage behind the pillar so that I can go back and like stealthily close the door, right? So I turn my back on the door to put the luggage back there, and all of a sudden I hear meow, and the cat goes running out of the door.
No.
And I don't even know the cat's name, so he's not going to come for me.
Yeah.
Right? I'm like, you have got to be kidding me. Now I'm in Escape from New York land out here amidst the trash and graffiti trying to look for this cat, hoping the cat doesn't run downstairs, because then I got my luggage. Anyways. So I'm like trying to get the cat back in. I'm like, oh, kitty, in a super quiet, whispery voice. So meanwhile, then I hear this, right? And I'm like, ruh-roh. So that's Jean-Louis waking up, right? So I did the only thing that I could think to do. And I go around the pillar and I hide right behind my luggage.
Oh my God.
So he can't see the luggage or me. And he's like, how did you get out? And the kitty's like, meow. So he picks the cat up and he goes inside thinking I'm still asleep. and closes and locks the 12 locks on the door. And I'm like, yes, home free. So I squirrel it back up with my little luggage, and I, kind of shift down the, multi flights of stairs with my big old luggage. And I get down to the bottom, and it's kind of like still a little bit dark outside, right? And I'm like, well, now what? Right? So I'm kind of like in this emotional state because I don't even know where I am. It's like New York, and who knows whether there's like muggers or killers or whatever, So I'm like walking down the curb, right? And there's a dude who's walking toward me, and he's all dressed in black from head to toe. And he's getting closer, and I thought about crossing the street so that we wouldn't cross, but there was no time with my luggage. It would have been weird. So I just kept my eyes averted. And then as he drew closer and closer, he's like, hey, you. I'm like, hi. He's like, what, are you going on a trip? Because he saw my luggage. And I was like, in a manner of speaking, he's like, oh, well, bon voyage. And he just kept walking. So eventually, I will tell you, I walked for a while, and I eventually saw other people wearing shirts and ties, and I followed them to where, civilization was, and I got out of that. But I will tell you that there is someone who heard this whole, story about what this ordeal that happened to me, took pity on me, and I stayed in a much nicer room than the one I was originally staying at that I got kicked out of because they didn't have enough room or whatever. So that was one nice thing that happened. But yeah, the trial of Jean-Louis, the cat, the rat, and the potential bat.
Wow, that is a crazy
You never
story.
heard from him again, right?
No. There are some things I could tell you, off the mic later on, but that are not suitable for this podcast. But anyways.
We have a very high standard here.
Yeah.
Aaron hasn't totally demolished that yet.
I haven't. I've been trying to be good. So.
No, we're good. How are we doing on time?
Good. Well, Aaron wants us to finish in an hour. I like to keep it about 3. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, keep that in mind.
Well, we have time for one more story if you want to, right?
An interesting travel story. Where's some place that you've been to that you think other people should visit, and why? And we'll end on that one.
Oh man, that's a tough one. I've been to Europe, I've been to Asia, I've been to Africa. I've never been to South America or Antarctica or Australia yet. So those are the continents I haven't been on. But of course, my family's from Europe. So, here's the thing about Europe. Things that are old here in the United States are 200 years old. Things that are old there are 2,000 years old.
Oh wow.
So, especially if you like Western art, Europe is can't miss. There's a ton of really cool things. And I'll tell you, I know it's a little bit cliche, but there's a dude named Rick Steves that produces some shows for PBS that it's called, I actually don't know what it's called, Rick Steves Travel Tips or something, or Traveling with Rick Steves. But he's actually very good. And I used some of his material to make some good decisions on where to travel. Like, I did a trip to Austria where I visited Vienna, and outside Vienna is the Melk Abbey, which is not something that's like super famous, but it's all gold gilded. It's like one of the most incredible places I've ever been. There's a place in Wiesbaden, Germany called the Kurpark, which literally, directly translated means health park, right? The cure. That's where our word cure comes from, is Kur, right? And it's incredible. They've got like a beautiful like pond, like a lake with fountains in it. And they have, these hand-built wooden houses that are specially painted where swans live.
Oh, wow.
Right? And they're just like swimming around out there, right? And then they have like a band shell where they have musicians that play Mozart in period costumes with period correct instruments.
Oh, wow.
So there's stuff like that that even if you're into like culture and stuff here in the United States, you don't see that here. You just can't get that. I don't know. I'm not familiar too much with back east or whatever, but that was a super special experience in Wiesbaden, Germany. Venice is a sight to see. Mm-hmm. I'll tell you what was interesting about Venice is that it's so quiet because there's no cars. There's no cars, and most of the boats don't even have motors, and they're only allowed on certain parts of the canals, the Grand Canal and a couple of the other big ones. So you get there, there's not dogs barking, there's no road noise, no tire noise. It's just the gentle lap, the very quiet, gentle lap of water. And that was almost eerie, but then I started to like feel an appreciation for it. And where you could almost hear, there were people who would be gathered like at a late night cafe, 10 o'clock, and they're very quietly speaking with one another. And you could hear them, not that I knew Italian, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There was just something special about that. The glass blowing, the Italian ice that's made in Italy. It was a lot of cool things. I picked up a tie there that was hand painted. I had somebody tell me one time, that tie's not hand. I'm like, no, I watched him do it. Put your finger on the paint. You can feel the texture. That is actual paint, right? Wow. You can't get that here, right? So I think the only other place I would say that was really, really something in China, there is a place called the Temple of Heaven. The Temple of Heaven, in China, the buildings, the roofs of the buildings all have, different colors. And I'll get to the Forbidden Palace in a minute, but Temple of Heaven has a blue roof, and it's like a bright royal, right? It contrasts even against the sky. And it's where the emperor went to kind of, meditate and try to, develop some of his own spirituality. But it was very interesting because the inside in China, when you look up indoors, they've painted and done stuff with the roof and like what in German we call Fachwerk, right? There's a bunch of wooden beams and all kinds of things they do, but it's not just like left plain. It's painted super, super intricately. Wow. So no matter where you are in whatever building, you look up and you're like, oh, it's another work of art just in the architecture and the painting of that, right? And the Forbidden City in Beijing, I mean, we've all seen the pictures of like Chairman Mao and that gigantic, 50-foot portrait that are so visible. But what's crazy about it is you get into these courtyards and there's a courtyard there and you're like, wow, that's amazing. And then you like walk through the next, there's a big staircase, you go up to the next, and there's another courtyard that looks exactly the same. And you're like, wow, this is amazing. The scale of this place is incredible. And you walk through another courtyard, climb the stairs, walk through the archway, another courtyard. So this goes on, I think, like 7 times, and it was specifically designed to confuse enemies should they ever breach these, 150-foot thick walls and 100, foot tall walls that even if they were to get in, they would never know which of the big buildings at the end of the courtyard the emperor was living in.
Oh, man.
Yeah, that was pretty incredible too.
That's really cool. I've never actually even heard of that before.
Okay, yeah, it's called the Forbidden Palace or the Forbidden City.
Okay.
Yeah, because only they call it a city because it was large enough. The palace is large enough to actually house hundreds of people, maybe more. And it's famous now because it's got Chairman Mao's picture on it. So whenever you see, because Tiananmen Square is right there, and we heard about that. Yeah. That was a no-no to even say that word while you were in China. They actually treated tourists very loosely, very carefully. They loved us, we were all there, but there were a couple rules about what you could do when you were there in China, and saying Tiananmen was one of them. You don't mention that. Oh, wow. That's where the tanks ran over people.
Yeah,
and
the college students and stuff.
Right, and then they told us which color uniform officers you could take pictures of, and if there was a certain color uniform in the frame of your photo, you were not allowed to snap that picture. Oh, wow. Because if you did and they noticed and they cared, which, no guarantees, but if they noticed, they could come and confiscate your camera and take you away if they wanted to. Wow. They don't typically do that with tourists, but generally, I have to say, China was a very interesting, very hospitable place. They want people from the West to come and experience their stuff because it is so very, very different from what we have. Yeah. It's becoming more westernized now, so there's Western toilets and Western signs that are, sometimes in English beyond just the characters. So it's becoming a little bit more easier to navigate. But yeah, that's the closest thing to an alien culture I've ever experienced. Oh. And having been to Kenya and Africa, Masai Mara is an interesting place. Hundreds of miles away from the nearest city, and just being with the animals and stuff. I was in a tent, on safari out there. Wow. And that is, the storms of Africa, the skies. I mean, everything is very, very different than it is here. So that might be the single most unforgettable thing I've done is the African safari in Masai Mara. I've taken some photos there, and just the feel of the redness of the ground and the clay and the soil, and the animals, and how these guys have lived there for a long, long time before people were running around. So that was very interesting. And African people, by the way, are very hospitable. They have, many times nothing. There are, of course, affluent people there too, but many times they have less than we do, and yet they'll give you anything. People, they have their priorities straight. People are more important than things there. And so I did appreciate that about the Africans.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I think from just traveling places, you do get to see a different perspective. And like you were saying, there's a lot of cool architecture here, but it's not as old. A lot of it's just modern stuff. It's kind of like, that's cool. But to see thousands of years old and a lot of thought put into it, I think that's pretty cool to experience. So,
right, yeah, no, it lets you know that the grand diversity that is possible within the human experience is really, really something.
Yeah.
Here it's 1, 2, 3 jump. In China it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 because everybody got 5 fingers. Why do you use 3? To them it's like alien. Like, what are you talking about, man? But that's it's kind of the same thing. We just think differently.
Yeah. Have you seen what was that thing that we saw? It was
he was
counting binary
on his finger.
Have you ever heard of that before?
I've heard this is a non-base 10 mathematics system, right? Yeah, there's a very primitive tribes in like the Amazon that use this that is actually more efficient than what we use.
Oh. It is, because you can count. I forgot how many. Up to
he said like
38
something on one hand.
One hand, and then
2 hands was like 3,000.
It was something ridiculous like that. Just in binary,
amazing.
and it was really interesting.
Yeah. So if anybody's listening, all of you people out there listening, look up binary counting. It's actually a really interesting system. Could be pretty helpful. So, well, we wanted to thank you for coming on to the podcast.
Of course, it was my pleasure.
It's been awesome.
Thank you.
I said, we have a lot of people who talk, but not a lot of people who are voice actors that I know. So I'm glad that we're able to get your talents on.
And you still don't have one. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, thank you so much. We appreciate it, and we would love to have you back sometime. Maybe we can talk about a few more of your travel stories. And
It's a lot of things. Like I would have wanted to talk more about Africa, but obviously we're on a time constraint.
We're getting
yes,
down
we
there.
are.
I know.
And we want to. We'll pick your brain some more. So if you would be willing to come back,
sure, I'll come back. Let's rock it.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
This has been Two Crazy Scoops Podcast with your hosts, Ao and Antino. Stay tuned next week when we have, I'm not really sure who the guest is, but it's going to be one of us. So enjoy, and thanks for listening. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Spotify.
Hi, Mom.